What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the All In podcast, episode 71. I am one of the co-hosts, Mike Badzik, joined by my guy, Eli Cooper. As always, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. I gotta say today's a bittersweet day. We just right before hopping on this podcast and recording, finished up filling out Rhea's preschool application today.
Oh, no way.
I think that makes me like 35, something like that.
I was thinking like 40, but I'll let you keep 35. I'll let you keep 35.
Man,
that's flying by, dude.
It's flying by. It's ridiculous, man. So bittersweet.
Congrats. Day. Yeah, it is kind of bittersweet. So, well, good for you. Good for Ray. Yeah. So. We've got lots of basketball to talk about today. This is an episode dedicated completely to the NBA playoffs and everything going on in the NBA world. It's been a crazy busy day. Do want to remind you guys to subscribe to the channel while you're here. If you enjoy our content, make sure you're subscribed. Turn on those notifications on the YouTube channel so you know when we go live and drop new content, as well as subscribing and leaving ratings and reviews on our audio platforms. Also, we are presented by mybookie.ag. You can head over there, mybookie.ag, use the promo code ALLINPOD, and get 100% sign-up bonus. Make sure you use that promo code so they know that we sent you, and you get that bonus. So, you ready to get into it, bro?
Let's get right into it.
Okay, first thing first, we got to talk about KD last night. Went crazy. We kind of were thinking – with the Kyrie injury and Harden, we weren't sure what we were going to get, and we ended up not getting much. We knew that he was going to have to put in a spectacular performance. I don't think, at least not me, I don't know about you, I wasn't expecting this, though.
Well, I don't think anyone could have possibly expected this because it was the first time in NBA history that anyone has done what Kevin Durant did last night. And you know what's funny? So yesterday, for the first time in God knows how long, I watched First Take.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I don't know what made me do it. But I just turned on First Take, and I was that bored yesterday.
Yeah.
In the middle of the day, I turned it on, and Stephen A. Smith, and they were talking about the preview of that game, and he said, one of my more famous quotes, back when I was working for the Philadelphia Inquirer, was that I picked the Sixers in 5, and I talked about how dominant the Lakers would be in the Lakers-Sixers series, 2001. And everybody was like, oh, well, why didn't you pick them in 4 then? And he was like, oh, well, AI will get you 1. Right? And he transitioned that into tonight, KD's going to get you 1. Wow. He said KD's going to go for 50. With no, and this was before Harden had been upgraded to doubtful by the time he had said this, but it was not known that he was going to play there. So they're assuming there would be no Harden. He said, this is the time where KD's got to get you 1. Yeah. And he was like, KD's going to go for 50. And he was right. Now, he didn't predict the triple-double part, but he was right. 49 is as close as you could possibly be. 49, 17, and 10. He did absolutely everything for them yesterday. And it's crazy because, the biggest knock on KD and probably the only thing that keeps him from like top 10, top 7 all time discussions is, everyone's knocking him. It's like, oh, he can't carry a team. People assume that because he joined a juggernaut to get his 2 championships and then did what he's doing, what happened in Brooklyn with this super team. Sure. Everybody's like, oh, KD be taking the easy way out. He can't carry a team by himself. And I always thought that was a false narrative about him. Like, that dude is one of the best players, just basketball players of all time, period.
Yeah,
like,
he might be the best.
Yeah, he's there's a legitimate argument that offensively he's the best player we've ever seen. There's just no way to guard somebody like him, man. Like he literally can just take 2 dribbles, go to whatever spot he feels comfortable in, and shoot the shit right over you. There's the only player in the world who can even possibly contest it wouldn't guard him, which I'll get to that. But I really want to address what KD did last night. I mean, he distributed, he did everything. He did literally what they needed him to do. If he doesn't do that, they lose. They don't even have a chance. And they were up by 15. The Bucks were up by 16, I think was the most they were up by. Yep. And he just couldn't be stopped. And it's those kind of performances that also kind of make you sit back and be like, man, I wish this guy wouldn't play on these super teams, because we could see, his full talent on display if he had a championship caliber team, but not a ridiculous super team to where people kind of forget how good he actually is. And so I always thought that narrative was false. Like, KD being on a super team erases the doubt that they're ever going to lose, right? Like, when he went to Golden State, there was no doubt that fully healthy they were going to lose. It doesn't mean that KD can't take a team to the finals or can't be the best player on an NBA championship team or carry a team. That's not what that meant. That's not what happened in Golden State. And I've been trying to tell that to people for 4 years now since he did it. And I think last night was proof of that, even though he didn't win a championship last night. Last night was proof that KD can beat anybody by himself, period.
And it's also proof that he's the best player in the league right now. Would be what I walked away from that game thinking, that he's the best player in the league. If I could pick one guy to have in these playoffs, including the people who are injured and the people who aren't out there, it's Kevin Durant. Because
even over a healthy LeBron?
Easily right now. And listen, this healthy LeBron that we saw, that's about as healthy as he's going to be, right, in the playoffs here. And he showed that he could not do this.
Yeah.
He could not do this, not even close to this. He was having trouble putting up 30 in those playoff games and just getting to his spots consistently anymore. And it comes with age, but also not having the help. The Kevin Durant legacy we're always going to have this taint on it. We're not sure what we're going to do with it historically.
Yeah.
Right? Some people might have him top 5. Some people are going to refuse to give him top 15 because of how he joined these super teams and how it ended up playing out. Now, you could also make the case when he went to Brooklyn, he didn't know that they were going to get James Harden. I mean, he obviously knew Kyrie was going there, but every team has 2 stars. Every contender has 2 stars, so that's no big deal, really. But then to add Harden, that kind of puts the super team logo on it. Now,
what was he going to say? No, don't trade for James Harden.
Exactly. Well, it's the same thing like when Steph and Clay, and everyone criticized them, and they're like, "Well, we're going to not sign KD."
Like what?
I don't know what you want from us.
Right.
But it's the same thing, kind of. And the other thing you did last night, you played 48 minutes, which 2 years coming off of that, pretty much 2 years, almost to the date, really, coming off of that torn Achilles. To play 48 minutes and be this dominant. And also Steve Nash saying, go ahead, man. We need you tonight. You do not need 8 minutes off. That's I get frustrated with coaches when they rest guys a little bit too much, I feel, in these must-win games. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, you go 48 minutes. Harden went 46 minutes. All right, so he was not afraid to let those guys go. And I think that's actually good. I don't think we've seen a lot from Steve Nash so far. I haven't loved his out of timeout sets, down the stretch. But I think that was a smart game plan decision. And Kevin Durant, you do not think Kevin Durant's the best player in the league, or you agree?
Well, I think I'd probably still take a fully healthy LeBron. Because I mean, fully healthy and in the flow. If we really look at it, the Sun series, what was it? 6? Did they go 6 games or 5?
They went
6, right?
6.
Yeah, because they won 2. So 6 games. Those 6 games were games 3 through 8 for him, coming back from the injury. So he didn't even really have time to get into a rhythm and be full steam. So I don't know that I want to judge him based off this year's playoff performance. Typically, LeBron can do what KD did last night. Now, maybe this year, maybe he's not that player anymore.
Yep.
But I think before I don't think I got a good enough sample size this year to say that he's not that player anymore. Because prior to his injury, he was that player. He was doing that when AD was hurt. So I would say right now I'd probably still lean LeBron, but it's a toss-up. I don't think you're crazy if you say KD. after what just happened last night. You know what I mean? I think it's a coin flip for sure. At this stage of their careers, it's absolutely it's a coin flip on which one you prefer. And I'm going off history, really.
It's crazy that it's still but think about this though. Like after 2018 and after 2017, there was a strong case for KD.
Yeah.
When they beat LeBron, and he probably outplayed LeBron in that finals. 2018, I don't know if he necessarily outplayed LeBron, but he won, right? Yeah. And then coming into 2019 finals and the 2019 playoffs, he had kind of been cementing himself as what we thought was the best player in the league. Now, obviously, he gets hurt. Mm-hmm. Kawhi wins the chip, and then we start the Kawhi narrative, and then LeBron comes back last year and obviously, takes that mantle back. But, it's not ridiculous to say that the last 4 playoffs that Kevin Durant was in, he was the best player in those playoffs.
No, it's not at all.
And he might, he got hurt, obviously. I would say that the Raptors still are going to win that championship, even if he doesn't get hurt. A lot of people would disagree with that, including you probably. But then if he wins this championship too, and then you go, okay, well, his last 4, he won 3 of them, and he got hurt in the 4, and the one he
lost. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like he's got a really strong case. He's got a really strong case, to be pushing top 5 player of all time, top 7 player of all time. I think right now he's, maybe if he gets this one, he's pushing top 10. And he might be passing some people. So, well,
the other thing that I find unfair about people who try to discount his legacy with the teams he's joined. Why don't we do that to Magic? Magic had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
yes,
who is a top 5 player of all, top 6, 7 player of all time, and arguably the GOAT during his era, like prior to Michael Jordan. Right? Yes. He was one of the, if not the GOAT, he was top 3 before Michael Jordan ever existed, in the players that have come after him. And then he had James Worthy. So, like, I mean, if you're talking all-time ranks, like, they're up there with Steph and Clay.
But right? He stayed with one team.
And granted, yeah, he stayed with one team. But he got 5. He went 5-4 in the finals, by the way. Okay. So, and he had a super team. Like, by all standards, he had as dominant of a roster of superstar talent as the Warriors did.
Well, that's like the dirty secret of like all of these all-time greats is like, they played on great. Bird played on amazing teams.
Oh my God, the Celtics were loaded.
Right, the Celtics were loaded. Like even like Jordan's Bulls, like they were loaded. Like all of these teams were loaded. It's just that it's not even that Kevin Durant went to. That is it. He went somewhere else.
Yeah.
And in the Warriors situation, it was the team that beat him the previous year.
And won 73-9.
And 173-9. So like all of those factors makes it a little bit different. So why don't we transition then? What are you expecting out of Game 6? It looks like Kyrie's out. Harden is, as of this recording, which is about 5:00 Eastern on Wednesday. He's available, quote unquote. I'm not sure exactly what available means. I guess that means he's playing.
Yeah.
So do you think the Nets close it out in Game 6 or just go Game 7? What do you think?
I do. I think the Bucks take Game 6. I don't say that with a ton of confidence because, as Charles Barkley so eloquently put it, they're the dumbest team in basketball.
Yes.
So I don't feel confident in saying that. But I think if we really look at last night and we're like, if KD had to do all that for them to get to squeak out a win, asking him to do that twice in 3 days is a bit much. And with I don't suspect that Harden will get a ton better by the next game. And then to also ask Jeff Green, because like not as great as Kevin Durant was last night, Jeff Green hit 7 threes.
Right.
So if we relied on 27 points out of Jeff Green again, I don't love that. It was pretty ugly before, KD and Jeff Green just went nuclear on the Bucks. So despite how god-awful their coaching is and how god-awful Giannis seems to be in crunch time, it may not get the crunch time in Game 6 at home with them backs against the wall, must-win situation for them. I think this one could be a double-digit win for the Bucks in Game 6. And then Game 7, is where we'll see that I think like last night was a desperation type game from KD. Yeah. I don't think he's going to have that same approach in Game 6, but Game 7
he might.
He's definitely going to have that kind of approach. So I got the Nets taking the series weirdly because if like we just said, if I have to play one game, pick a guy for one game for my life, Kevin Durant is the second guy on my list and the first on yours. He's the top guy available on my list. So I think the Bucks take Game 6. They try to get Harden as healthy as possible for Game 7, while still expecting Durant to carry them out of this round. And then you deal with the injuries and stuff like that later. I got the Nets in 7.
Yeah, so it's going to be the Nets. They're going to win. I don't know if it's going to be Game 6. The Bucks might come out with energy here. But I think this also proved, this game proved that, if it's close, the Nets are going to win. If it's close at all, the Nets are going to pull away at the end, and they're just going to make shots when the Bucks are not. And we knew this was coming. I knew this was coming. You tricked me. I picked the Nets. And then after that Miami series, you were like, well, it looks like Drew Holiday and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, the defense. Man. And I thought maybe the Bucks can do it this year. But why did I do that? Because we know who Giannis is. We know who Giannis is. He's the same guy he was last year in the playoffs. It is so frustrating to watch them try to play offense. If I was a Bucks fan, I don't know if I could watch
late in games, especially.
Oh, especially late in games. I don't know if I could watch these games. Giannis does the craziest stuff. He'll be towards the post. He'll back the ball out and then try to get a running start. This is not basketball moves that are effective. I just don't. I don't quite get it. Something's not clicking with them. And Drew Holiday has not been what he was in the Miami series either.
And my biggest thing is, so I thought the coaching last night was just god awful. Win or lose, and even if the Bucks win a title, someone said on Twitter, even if the Bucks win it all, Budenholzer should be fired because they would be winning in spite of him. Because terrible. I can't for the life of me understand how a professional NBA team is that stagnant on offense. Mm-hmm. I coached 9th and 10th graders, and they have that issue. Sure. You guys are pros, man. There's no reason that a professional basketball team doesn't have a go-to set or play, anything like that. I mean, James Harden was a clear shell of himself last night. It was so he couldn't move laterally.
Yeah.
There was one time Connaughton got a dribble handoff and he switched and just blew right past him.
Didn't even try.
And he couldn't do anything. And these guys wouldn't do anything to get him on an island. They didn't try to run any switching action where he gets stuck on Middleton or Holiday. They did. There was one time when Holiday took James Harden off the dribble. And then Giannis had him in the post on a possession. And I just saw a replay of it earlier on my timeline. Harden waved the help defender off. Someone was coming to dig in. Someone was coming to dig in on Giannis's post. He said no. Harden said no, stay. And he took a fadeaway jump shot.
Yeah.
Giannis took a fadeaway jump shot with even if James Harden was fully healthy. I'm saying thank you if I'm James Harden for any time Giannis takes a fadeaway jump shot in crunch time. This man with a guy with one hamstring, one functional hamstring, took a fadeaway jump shot on him.
Over his right shoulder too. It wasn't even it was a natural motion. It was.
I was perplexed. I could not figure out what was happening at that point. And then Drew Holiday leaves him a drop-off pass. He fumbles it late in the game when they're down 2 or 3, something like that. And Charles Barkley, I think he was hilarious last night. Yeah. He said Giannis dropped the ball because he was scared to catch it and get fouled and go to the free throw. Yeah, and legitimately, I think that's why he took the fadeaway. Because a couple of a possession before, he went up strong, got fouled. I think Jeff Green fouled him, and he went to the line. He went 1 of 2. Yeah. I think there's a legitimate fear and him and another guy I'm going to talk about later have a legitimate fear of going to the foul line, especially late in games, and it makes them less aggressive. Mm-hmm. So they're almost out of the picture. But here's my thing. As a coach, you have to know that, right? Like you can kind of after 2 years of Giannis being in the playoffs, this is well documented. He's not the guy you're going to go to down the stretch.
Correct.
Drew Holiday didn't play terrible last night. I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah.
Chris Middleton was good last night. Like, why are you not running sets to get these guys one-on-one with James Harden? You can use Giannis as a screener or something. Like, get somebody an open shot or put him in in a legitimate pick and roll, like, so that you can get switches that you want. I don't understand what they were trying to do. I also hate the fact that they've made Brook Lopez like a 7-foot spot up shooter.
Just get a better spot up shooter if you just want a spot up shooter.
I don't understand why, if you just want someone to stand on the 3-point line, why not just put give all his minutes to Bryn Forbes? He's your best shooter. Sure. So why not just put him and he's not going to be any worse defensively than Brook Lopez is. So I mean, Giannis isn't guarding the best player. You clearly want him in help. So like just put Giannis at the damn 5. Like I can't figure out why the Bucks are so intent on playing Brook Lopez as a stretch as a 3-and-D guard.
Yeah, and why they're not intent on playing Giannis at the 5, which we've talked about where he should be the 5.
It makes no sense. It absolutely makes no sense to me. Like think about it. Like the Lakers do it with Anthony Davis. What's the difference between Giannis and Anthony Davis? Anthony Davis can shoot better. So I can't figure out why. And they play him at the 5, even though he doesn't like it. I can't figure it out for me. He's a center, bro. Put him at center.
If they want to do this thing where there's 4 guys standing around Giannis, don't have Giannis out there with the ball 30 feet away from the hoop. Do it Dwight Howard in Orlando style, where he's down on the block and you have shooters around him. Like he's not this guy. Like at some point, and Budenholzer, it's funny you mentioned like they don't run any sets. Like that's what Budenholzer was known for. When he was in Atlanta, we were like, man, these guys' sets are awesome. Like the way they pass and move, and he learned it from Popovich. He was a Spurs assistant. And like now it's like, no, that's not what we're gonna do. We're just gonna do this, stand around and clear it out. And I was on the Bucks. I wanted the Bucks to win at coming into this series because I like that Giannis stayed with them. I'd like to see that more and more, and I was hoping it would bring success. But now I'm just like, this is so frustrating to watch and to cheer for that. I'm totally off it. I agree. They should definitely fire Budenholzer. So, all right, let's move on to your team, who is currently tied 2-2 with the Hawks. The Hawks took game 4 at home, 103-100. They finally were able to get some stops. After game 3, they could not get any. The story here, I think, has to be, 2 stories here, and they're the 2 best players for the Sixers. Embiid, who could not get anything going. I'm sure you're going to touch on that. And I would argue he even looks a little gimpy yet, and BenSimmons as well. So why don't you talk about your guys?
Yeah, so I'll start with Embiid because his issue is more important. It looked like he re-aggravated the injury sometime in that second half.
Yes.
Obviously it's well known he went over 12, blew a relatively wide open layup in crunch time, wide open to his standard.
Sure. In
crunch time with I think it's down 1, something like that. A play that he probably dunks more times than even tries to lay it up. But even if he does lay it up, he finishes that almost 10 times out of 10. And I think he said it himself, he just didn't get the lift that he wanted. And honestly, I think it was kind of it worked. It's the biggest issue that I have with him. Is that this is a recurring theme. Yeah. Is that in playoff time, despite how incredible he is, we can never guarantee full health for him. And it's just, it is what it is. It typically is a knee injury pretty much every playoff. Doesn't matter how much they rest him or what. It just always seems like there's a new knee injury that happens that he usually sustains in the first round. Yep. And then he's either in and out of games or he plays really well. Like, he's been incredible this series, averaging like 30, I think 12 and 30 and 12, something like that in this series. He's been incredible. And then all of a sudden the re-aggravation, and he's terrible. And we essentially lose because of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, we lost because of that. And granted, they probably could have did some different things to overcome it, but it's hard to like just completely like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, Tobias or Ben should have stepped up, but it's kind of hard to like, Embiid's out there, you know what I mean? Like, he's on the floor. It's not like, it's different than when he leaves the game, right? Then you see it and you're like, all right, now we have to step up, right? But he's still out there and he's still playing. He had 21 rebounds and he's still like getting up and down the floor. Like, that wasn't the issue. It was just like when he had the ball in his hands, he was terrible. And I at the time I was like, I think he's hurt, but I'm not 100% sure. Like, he doesn't look super hurt to the point where like he's airballing,
right?
and stuff like that. And I was just like, it looked like he was searching. He was trying too hard to get to the foul line at times, or he was just either that, or he was settling for jump shots because he didn't want to go in the paint. And obviously, if your knee's hurting, that's something that's going to be in the back of your mind. He didn't get lift on his shot. So I'm not saying I don't believe that he was hurt. He clearly was. But it's like, if you're in the middle of the flow of the game and you see this guy still grabbing every rebound and getting down the floor, and it's like,
then we don't want to hear it, bro.
Yeah, I still want to play. Like, I'm still going to play. I'm still going to give you the ball. You're out here. Like, we're still going to try to play through our best player. And if you're too hurt to give us what we need, then you need to say something. If you're trying to tough it out, that's cool. But like, maybe say, hey, Tobias, Ben, I'm gonna do everything on the defensive end, and I'll do as much as I can on offense, but I ain't got it tonight. And then that's kind of like, all right, let's step it up. But I don't think that was it. There was never any discussion of that, because they kept trying to play through him and he just could not deliver because the knee. And Robbie, my younger brother, brought up a excellent debate topic, because with Embiid making second team All NBA, he's now eligible for the Supermax. So Kyle actually brought that up, put that in our family group message, and Robbie says I wouldn't give it to him. He says I would sell high on him this offseason, and let somebody else give him a contract extension, because that could potentially be a bad contract. It started this whole debate in the group. I'm on the fence about it. I'm not going to lie. And I think this postseason will tell me. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the talent and skill of Joel Embiid. Nothing to do with that. But every year of his career, he's been hurt. And when they've made the playoffs, he's gotten hurt in the playoffs. He has not gotten through. We haven't gotten out of the second round, but he has not gotten through the first round without being injured yet. And it's just like, can we ever? He's 26 now. He was in the 2014 draft class. So he's 7 years into the league now.
That is the oldest 26-year-old.
That's what I'm saying. So his age is 26. Those knees are 33.
Yes.
At least. Right? So it's like, are you willing to give a 5-year, $190 million extension to someone who might not ever be healthy in the playoffs? And if he is, it might be one, maybe two of those 5 years. Are you willing to kick that money out for the off chance that he's healthy in the playoffs? And I was like, you know what? I don't know that I'm super on board with trading him, because for one, superstar for superstar trades don't happen, right? So like, we're never going to get the equitable value back for Embiid. You'd essentially be going into rebuild mode. The Sixers would have to decide and say, we're going to take a buttload of picks and young players from someone who might be in contention, and we'll start this thing all over, right? Like, that's what you would have to do, because you can't get Lillard.
Oh my gosh, what a bummer that would be.
Exactly, you know what I mean? Especially when you just signed Tobias long term, you just signed BenSimmons long term. And BenSimmons is still relatively young, so if you were going to hit the reset button, now would kind of be the time. But do you want to build around Ben Simmons? Do you have the confidence that he's that player? I don't.
No.
So that's the thing. Ben Simmons is probably getting shipped out then, right? Or maybe not that same summer, but like maybe in a year or two. Tobias is probably getting shipped out. Like you're going through the process again at that point because you can't get Lillard for Embiid. Portland would have no interest in that. If they're trading Lillard, they're going to tank, right? They're going to be looking to tank, not continue to be the 7th or 8th, 6th seed.
Correct,
you know what I mean? So that's not a destination for him. Brad Beal and the Wizards is not a realistic destination for Embiid. Again, that's a situation where if they just fired Scott Brooks, they're probably going to go into a rebuild rather than sitting in a 7-8 seed. The only teams that would be interested in Embiid are contending teams. And I don't know a ton of those that, have a ton of draft capital to give back. You know what I mean? Like the Lakers did when they traded for AD. The Pelicans were very fortunate that there was a suitor like that out there. I don't know that there's a team out there that has that kind of situation for you. Yeah. So it's like you're not getting equitable value if you trade Embiid. So that's why I'm on the fence. But it begs the question. It begs the question, right? Because that's a lot of money for a dude who's never been healthy in the playoffs.
No, and especially like the big guys like this, the 7-foot plus guys
with knee and back issues.
The knee, the back, you start to compensate, right? When you can't jump from the knees as well, you start to jump more from the ankles. He's had feet problems in the past, right? So, man, that is an interesting topic here that Robbie kicked out there.
I'm going to take that one to Twitter after this episode.
You should take that one to Twitter. I think you almost have to. Just because, if he's on your team, you're a contender.
Yeah.
Right, I would say. But if he's not healthy, you're not a contender. So, man, that's a really tough one. But, like, here's the thing, too. Like, so going back to this series, he obviously did not have it. I think Capella deserves some credit for the defense he played. But he obviously looked hurt.
Yeah.
But Ben Simmons is just, like – he's frustrating to watch. I mean, we talk about the Bucks, but like the Simmons stuff, and this is, going on 3-4 years now of this, so it's nothing new. But I don't know if he's someone that I want to build around. Maybe not, he's a good piece. I think if I'm a championship contender and I could add him as a third piece, but I just don't know what he is at this point where there's not much going on offense. I mean, transition offense, sure. He's obviously amazing. The finishing and the passing is both great. But, like, in a half-court set playoff situation, he's just not someone I love having in my sets.
Yeah.
Now, someone who I do love having in my sets is Trae Young. That guy is awesome. We have hated on Trae Young in the past. We have talked a lot of shit about the way he plays. He's been amazing. 25 and 18 in Game 4 is really phenomenal. And against this Sixers team who, all year when we were talking about them and why we think that they could be a serious contender, why you were thinking they could be a serious contender, it started with the defense and the ability of Simmons and Thibault to lock up other teams' best players. That has not been the case at all when it comes to Trae Young. He's kind of been able to do almost whatever he wants. They're doing some different stuff. I'm interested to see how Doc Rivers tries to approach Trae Young in Game 5. Maybe you can have more coaching insights into what he would try to do to slow him down. But they're also getting contributions from Bogdanovich. John Collins was 14 and 12 in Game 4, but he was really good in the previous game. So like they're playing well. I don't think the Hawks are like we shouldn't be shocked. Obviously, if the Sixers lose to the Hawks, it's a disappointment, and we're going to look at this season and say that was a big disappointment to not make it out of the second round. But the Hawks are legit.
Yeah, they are, and really, they'd be a scary team for anyone in the postseason because they're so good offensively. Yeah. I think Ben and Matisse have done as good of a job as you possibly can on someone as good as Trae Young. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, like, defensively. And there's been times where they've actually really bothered him. I thought the last 2 games they bothered him as much as you possibly can in today's NBA. With the way that the game is structured. So the 18 assist was incredible, and that's really where that's really where he kind of is his most dangerous, right? Is because you can do a good job. Like holding Trae Young to 25 points is actually an accomplishment, right? Because like he's typically around like 28, 29 throughout this postseason. So if you get him down to 25, that's pretty good. The issue is when he gets everyone else involved. And I've always liked Trae Young's skill set, right?
Yes.
And like what he does. Like there's never been a doubt about how good he is. The doubt that I've always had was his play style. And really, I've kind of always had the feeling like if he ever, as he gets older, like he's super young. This is typically what young players do is they dominate the ball, you know what I mean? And then eventually, and they show that they're superstar individual players. And then they eventually have to learn to be winning players. And Nate McMillan has taught Trae Young how to be a winning player. And he's taught a lot of these young Hawks players how to be winning players. There's a lot to be said about Nate McMillan. If there was a half coach of the year, half of the season coach of the year award, he'd win it by far. With the turnaround that he did, with this Hawks roster, they were struggling early on. John Collins was complaining because the ball was in Trae Young's hands too much. And it's not like that anymore. While he has it a lot still, they run a lot of pick and rolls for Huerter. Bogdanovich, they run a lot of sets for him. They run post ups and things like that for Gallinari.
Yep.
They do a better job of getting John Collins involved. So everybody that steps on the floor for the Hawks is a weapon, that's always a dangerous team to play against. Their issue really is that they're not that good defensively, which is why you see the series at 2-2.
Yeah.
This Hawks team is dangerous. They'll be dangerous if they get past us in the next round against an unhealthy Nets team. That would, I would be very fearful of an unhealthy Nets team that doesn't play defense playing against the Hawks. But I think defensively, the last 3 games we've done enough to win. The Sixers have done enough to win. That isn't the issue. It's really just, is Embiid healthy? And if he's not healthy, can other guys step up? And back to BenSimmons, at this point, he's Draymond Green. He's arguably the best defender in the league.
Yeah.
Right. He's an excellent rebounder, good finisher, excellent in transition. But in a half court offense, he's a liability. And, it's to the point where one, is that a guy you want to build around? Is that guy worth $170 million is the other question, which is what he's getting right now. I'd say no. Draymond Green would probably tell you no. But like, the biggest thing with me isn't even the jump shot. It's the lack of aggression. Yeah. He really could get out in transition and attack more in transition than what he does, but for whatever reason he doesn't. And like you said, in the half court, he's been so bad that they took him off with 7 seconds left in this last game, down 3, and put Shake Milton in. Like when you're getting subbed out in late crucial situations for Shake Milton, that's an issue. Right, that's an issue for a former number 1 overall pick that's getting $170 million over the next 5 years. And don't get me wrong, I hate this narrative that you can't say anything bad about BenSimmons. Like a lot of Sixers fans are like, "Oh, the BenSimmons hate is way overblown. He does so much for this team." We know what BenSimmons does for the team, right? Like he's the best defender on the planet on the perimeter. Like we know that. We know he's going to be out when he gets out in transition. He's going to be good. We know he's going to find open shooters.
Yeah,
cool. But at the end of the day, he cannot take one shot in an entire half, and we sit back and be okay with that, because that's not what we're paying $170 million for. That's not what we drafted him number 1 overall.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, as a number 1 pick, like. That's not what you're expecting out of a number 1 pick
at all. And don't get me wrong. And you can criticize BenSimmons' offensive deficiencies and his lack of aggressiveness while still acknowledging all the great things that he does for the Sixers. So like when Embiid is dominant, sure, BenSimmons doesn't really need to do anything but average like 12 points. Like, you know what I mean? Like 12 to 13 points. Like, we can live with 12 to 13 points from BenSimmons. When Embiid goes 0 for 12, you need to get 20.
Sure.
You got to get 20.
We have to be able to get 20. Like, we've had this conversation before. Like, how many guys in the league, if the coach said go get 20 and here's the ball, go get 20, could go get 20?
There's about 25 guys in the league now that can do that.
I bet there's even more than that. If you said, here's the usage rate, go get 20. I don't know if BenSimmons is one of those guys.
I don't think he would try. That's my biggest issue. I'm not sure that he would even try to do that if you told him to.
He would say, "No, I'm good, coach."
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. I don't even like. I actually think he could. I think he could get 20. Like, and I think he could get 20. It wouldn't be super efficient, but I think he could. Right, if he pushed the ball in transition, if he posted up his smaller guards, like he attacked more against smaller guards and didn't kick the ball out so much, I do think he could.
Yeah.
The problem is that he wouldn't. He would literally say, "Nah, I'll give you 16 and 10."
Yeah.
Like, that's what he wants to do, and it's just like, and now and that's why it's been so great that Tobias has been as great as he's been throughout the regular season and the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. He didn't step up in Game 4 as I thought he should have. But they were insistent on trying to play through Embiid, but whatever, you know what I mean? It's like, it's to the point where that responsibility now of the guy who steps up and becomes our second best player is Tobias. BenSimmons is an afterthought offensively. Do
you want to give a prediction, seeing as how by the time we release this, Game 5 is going to be over?
Yeah, I'm going to say we take Game 5 though. Okay. I think they'll make the necessary adjustments. I haven't heard anything about Embiid possibly missing this game or still being hurt. So I'm thinking, a couple days off might help with the aggravation that he had, hopefully. So I'm thinking he'll be better. And I'm thinking even if he's not, Tobias will recognize it sooner and be a little more aggressive. And I think BenSimmons will be a little more aggressive. He tends to respond after he gets heavily criticized in the media, which he has been the last couple games. He tends to respond for one game and then go back to doing what he was doing. Yeah. So I think Game 5 will be that. And I think the Sixers still win in 6. That's what, at the end of Game 1, I said Sixers in 6. So I wasn't surprised that they won last night. The other night, I wasn't surprised that they tied this up. I think the Sixers win Games 5 and 6. Assuming full health from Embiid. Let me get that disclaimer in there.
That's a big assumption.
Assuming full health, I think the Sixers win the next 2 and move on and see the Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the Sixers are the better team, and I think that they end up winning too, assuming some health, obviously. If you did not just hear a prediction about Game 5, it's because the Hawks won and we cut it out. So let's move on to the last series that's still going on in the second round, and that is Clippers-Jazz. Clippers have battled back here. It is 2-2, but news out today, Kawhi is injured out indefinitely. I think there's fears of ACL stuff. So it's a little bit unclear of if or when he'll come back. It looks like he's definitely going to be out for 5 and 6. It's really looking like it's going to be longer than that. So, thoughts on this series so far?
It's a huge bummer, honestly, because I think the Clippers were going to win this series. I do. First of all, let's give Ty Lue a lot of credit because this is the second series in a row they went down 2-0 and he made the proper adjustments. He has not had Ibaka either, which is a relatively big loss for them.
Definitely.
Especially on the defensive end. So, but Kawhi's been incredible. Yeah. In both of these last 2 series, and even Paul George has played really well. But they can't win this series without Kawhi. I don't think they can win this series without Kawhi. I'm not sure they can win another game without him. He's been that good. He's that important to them. It's a bummer, man, because this was finally turning into a good series. It looked like the Jazz might, run away with this in 4 or 5, and the Clippers, came back, tied them up, and behind Kawhi and Paul George, and now you're asking Paul George to be the best player on your team to win you 2 or 3 games. I'm not sure that he's that guy, despite how well he's played. He's played well for like a number 2 option. I'm not sure he'll be able to elevate his play enough over someone like Donovan Mitchell, who's been really good in these playoffs.
Yeah.
So I think the Jazz probably win in 6. But it's unfortunate, man. There's just so many injuries happening in this playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's obviously really unfortunate. Kawhi is obviously one of my favorite players, and I was actually was cheering for the Clippers. I'm not really a Clippers fan, but I was kind of cheering for them to make the finals. I thought Clippers-Nets finals would have been pretty awesome with Kawhi and Paul George and KD and Harden, obviously all those superstars. So to lose him really sucks. I think that the Jazz probably are just going to be too much for a team that's built around 2 superstars like that. When they pretty much mortgage a lot of their assets for those superstars, it's just going to be really tough. They're going to need huge games from Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris, and while those are possible to happen, it's just it's just not as likely as the Jazz kind of playing the game they've played all year with a team effort. So I think the Jazz will win as well. So let's move on from this series, but talk more about these injuries. So Kawhi, we have lost now indefinitely. There's been injuries throughout the entire playoffs. I think there's been like 8 guys who have missed games, 8 All-Stars who have missed games because of injuries, and that's not including Chris Paul, who we'll get to. So LeBron tweeted about this, and I actually have the tweets. Not from my Twitter, but I was sent them. So let me pull them up here. All right, so LeBron tweeted. You want me to read these, or you just want me to summarize?
Let's read them.
Okay. LeBron tweeted, "They all didn't want to listen to me about the start of the season. I knew exactly what would happen. I only wanted to protect the well-being of the players, which ultimately is the, in all caps, product and benefit of, all caps, our game. These injuries isn't just, all caps, part of the game. It's the lack of, all caps, pure rim rest. Rest before starting back up. 8, possibly 9 All-Stars have missed playoff games, most in league history. This is the best time of the year for our league and fans, but missing a ton of our favorite players. It's insane. If there's one person that knows about the body and how it works all year round, it's me, all caps. I speak for the health of all our players, and I hate to see this many injuries this time of year. Sorry, fans. Wish you guys were seeing all your fave guys right now. Praying hands, crown emoji." Thoughts?
Well, I wonder if the Christmas revenue was worth it. Those, because that was like what they were so desperate to get the season started, right? Those Christmas Day games bring a lot of TV ratings. And that's kind of why they rushed the beginning of this season. And then I wonder if 72 games was too many for the short amount of months that they played in, right? Maybe they should have took it down to 60. So there weren't so many, back-to-backs and things like that in such a short period of time. I guess LeBron's right. I mean, 9, potentially 8, potentially 9 All-Stars. Those are just All-Stars. We're not even talking about like important role players that are hurt as well. Throughout this entire playoffs. And then Jamal Murray tweeted something interesting, like the healthiest team is going to win it all this year, not the best. And maybe you could say that every year, but everybody was healthy in the bubble last year for the most part. Besides the Nets, everybody was healthy in 2018 when the Warriors won it for the most part. Well, not the Rockets. They had the Chris Paul injury. Yeah, Chris Paul. Everybody was healthy for the most part in 2017, except for Kawhi in the Western Conference Finals. 2016.
Well, these are kind of big injuries, so
I mean, these are a lot of big injuries, but it wasn't to this extent.
It's not this many injuries,
right? And it wasn't to the point where it's like last team It's like a it's like a mosh pit, right? It's like whoever didn't get stomped out
right.
physically is who's going to be like the last one standing, and it's just like kind of takes the fun out of it because the Lakers shouldn't have had to play the Suns in the first round in the first place, and then when they did play them, Anthony Davis was out and Chris Paul was banged up, so like that series wasn't even as good as. Even if you want to talk about it being in the first round, that series wasn't as good as it should have been. Right. For a lot of as far as like the excitement of those actual games. So, these are like series and postseason altering injuries that are happening that maybe the Nuggets don't get swept if they have Jamal Murray. There's a lot of ifs and ands and buts on this playoffs. And LeBron absolutely was right. And I kind of love when he does this because he, throughout his career, typically takes the high road, right? And so I love when he talks his shit, especially when he was absolutely right. He was like, right. I tried to tell you guys, nobody wants to listen to me, though, even though I'm the guy who spends $1 million a year keeping his body healthy because I play the most games of anyone in the NBA. So I would know that forcing a 72-game season into 5 months isn't a good idea. And this is where it's always tough, because it's the people over profit thing, right? Like you want to get these games in because you want to protect revenue, right? And protecting revenue ends up being good for the players, and we understand that. However, are you actually protecting revenue when these guys aren't healthy in the most important time of the season?
If the Jazz make the finals, it's a disaster.
Oh, it's going to be ugly.
It's a disaster. The ratings are already way down, and we've talked about that plenty, and we don't need to dive in to that again. But like losing all of these stars, it's not the same product without them, right? Like Jazz Clippers just got way less fun. Denver and Portland would have been more fun with Jamal Murray. And then obviously, like you mentioned, Lakers, Suns, and Jaylen Brown. Went down too. Forgot about that. Like, imagine that would have been a fantastic series. I think that's probably maybe they win even in the same amount of games, but it's a lot better back and forth games if Jaylen Brown is there with Tatum against those guys from Brooklyn. Like, you can just keep listing guys. It's pretty crazy. We're forgetting guys even who have been hurt. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, and think about it. Like, if it's not the Bucks that come out of the East, the Nets or the Sixers are going to be carrying hobbled superstars into the finals. Like, James Harden doesn't look like he's anywhere near being himself. Not just for the rest of this series, for the next series. Like, I don't think unless he gets a significant amount of time to rest, he might be a shell of himself for the rest of this playoffs or up until the finals. We might not get Kyrie back.
We might not.
An ankle sprain. Well, yeah, that too. But and that's a guy, especially for someone like him who basketball is not a priority for him. So he's definitely not going to put his body's health at any further risk for a playoff run. So it's even if the Nets make it out of the East, they're not going to be at full strength, at 100% full go. And maybe they never were going to be because they barely played in the regular season. But they're definitely not going to be it now. Harden or Kyrie, if they make it to the finals, are going to be hobbled, right? There's no doubt in my mind that Embiid is certainly going to be even more hobbled if he gets to the finals.
And if Milwaukee makes the finals, it's also a disaster.
But yeah. Well, there's no way, shape, or form I'm watching a Bucks Jazz finals.
Oh, I'll watch, but my wife's not watching. She doesn't care.
Right.
I use her as a good metric for the interest of the average fan. So she watches if I'm on, it's on. If I'm watching, it's on in the background. Or so today I'm I wanted to gauge the average fan, not even an average fan, the average viewer who might tune in. Oh, it's the NBA Finals. I'll tune it in. Who they would know. Right? What players would they know if they're in it? Because we've always had LeBron or Kevin Durant or Steph Curry, right? Like those guys been in the finals over and over and over for the past 6 years. So today, like I kind of went through the litmus test, and I was like, "Do you know who Joel Embiid is?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Well, he's that really tall guy that plays for the Philly. Oh, okay, maybe, yeah, I think if I saw him. Okay, but he's not a household name. Right? Like, he's not a household name. Like, same thing with, like, the Suns. Like, Devin Booker, like, not a household name. Donovan Mitchell, not a household name. Giannis is becoming a household name because he was back-to-back MVP, and he's got a funny name.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't necessarily consider him, like, household name like LeBron or Steph Curry or Kevin Durant. So it's just interesting. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I think the NBA now is praying that the Nets make it to keep Kevin Durant, and then maybe the Suns, and if Chris Paul is there, let's actually transition to the Suns while I just brought them up. So they handled their second round matchup easily. Chris Paul was fantastic. What were your thoughts first on how they handled the Nuggets and how serious of a contender they are now?
Well, I think they're the best team in the West.
Yeah,
the best team in the West, and that includes the Jazz on both ends of the floor. Chris Paul was incredible in that game 4. I mean, for anybody who tries to say that the mid-range shot is a bad shot, watch Chris Paul's game 4 game film. Right. You need to be able to hit that shot to beat drop coverage like the Nuggets were playing in pick and roll. Simple as that.
Correct.
And the way that he can just kind of control a game like that, it takes so much pressure off of Devin Booker, who was also incredible in that game. It's just that backcourt duo is going to be a menace for every team that they play going forward. Mikal Bridges, I think, is the best role-playing wing in the league. Best 3-and-D wing in the league. Jay Crowder's been very good after his sluggish start in the playoffs. DeAndre Ayton on both ends of the floor has been a huge presence for them inside. They've got bench depth. Cameron Payne's been great off the bench. Saric, Cam Johnson, our boy, is a sniper for them off the bench. So they've got the depth. Monty Williams has been excellent from a coaching perspective. They've got all the tools. They've got everything you need to win a championship. I think they're the best team in the West. And I don't know what's going to happen with, the Chris Paul thing, but
let's talk about
it. If he's fully, they're going to have some time, to get him out of the protocols.
They say
and I
tested
don't know
positive.
Did he test positive?
He tested positive.
Okay, because I wasn't sure if that's what they said. He was in health and safety protocols. I wasn't sure if that was because he tested positive or not.
I've seen a couple say he tested positive now. So they're saying he did test positive, but they also said he got the vaccine. Can I give a controversial opinion? Can I give a controversial opinion?
Yes.
That you're going to hate?
Yes.
They should scrap the COVID protocols. They should scrap the COVID protocols now. It's time to scrap the. I know you hate it. It's time to scrap them because, and I'm not a science guy. Okay, but I will.
Oh, we lost Mike. By the way, I don't fully hate what he's saying. If you get it back here in the next couple of seconds, I don't know if you can hear me, but I don't fully hate what Mike was saying there. But go ahead, Mike. Can you hear me now, Mike?
Did you cut my feed?
No. Anything? I can hear you.
There we go. I can hear you now, Coop.
You
cut my feed because of the controversial opinion, didn't you? I knew you were going to kick me.
No,
I knew you were going to kick me.
I was actually in the dead air there because I thought you'd come back in a couple of seconds. I was trying to fill the dead air. I was like, I don't actually think that's a bad idea.
Well, here's why. Like at this point, most of these players, all of these players have at least had the option, and all of these coaches and all of these staff members have had the option of getting the vaccine. Okay, so my point of view is if you chose not to get the vaccine and you get sick, that is the consequences that you chose. Okay, we should not be coddling these people, in my opinion, that chose not to get the vaccine, whether that was because of bad science. I don't know why they decided not to get it. But like Chris Paul, like we're now going to take this from him. He did the right thing. He got the vaccine for this very reason. If he did get COVID, he would be protected. And also the people around him who chose to get the vaccine would get protected, let alone the fact that none of these players are at risk of COVID. But that's a different story. But like, I think at this point, when we're coming down to the wire here, they should scrap the COVID protocols and let Chris Paul play. At the very least, he should not have to sit out for 10 days or whatever the normal protocols are.
Right. So, yeah, I think if he doesn't have any symptoms, he shouldn't have to sit 10 days.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think to be honest, I think they're going to play this by ear and see how long it takes Utah and Clippers to get done, and then kind of go. That's what I would do. I would just go from there. I'd say he's in health and safety protocols for now, and we will reevaluate, because then you can kind of look at maybe the Jazz, or if the Clippers somehow win that series, whatever, right? Like maybe a lot of their players have been vaccinated, right? And you can kind of go back and look at that and be like, all right, he's asymptomatic. That entire team is vaccinated, or 75% of that team, or whatever the percentage is vaccinated, however many players it is. And then kind of make your decision based on the science there. That's what I would do. I don't know that I wouldn't scrap it, because then if there's a team that's like, or if the rest of his teammates are not vaccinated like at all, if it's like a low percentage, which I think it might be, I don't think a lot of NBA players got the vaccine. I think that's been a pretty common. I think it's been a common theme that like most of these teams are under 50% of their players are vaccinated. I think, but I haven't checked that. Don't quote me on that. I haven't checked that number or stat. I just pulled that. That's what I've been early on. It was kind of like a lot of them were resistant to getting it. But I can tell you, so I'm going to Puerto Rico next week, right?
Okay.
Holly does not have to get a negative test because she's vaccinated. I am not vaccinated yet. I have to get a negative test.
Oh, are you an anti-vax recruit?
No. Absolutely not. That's a whole different story. But in this case, essentially the person who's vaccinated is a lot less likely to spread it to other people and also be affected by it. So, I think in this case, I think you can definitely make some amendments to the protocols and make your decision once the Jazz and Clippers series is finished up. You kind of can make a more informed decision then. And honestly, like, when's that series going to begin? It's probably going to be in a week, it might be 10 days.
Could
so
be
like
7.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it could be to the point where like, all right, he hasn't gotten sick, or maybe he'll test negative within that period. And it's not a big deal. So I would play the wait and see approach.
Or they could do what baseball did.
They let Bron play after going to a party with Drake and Michael B. So like they have the protocols, but they're not 100% following them. You know what I mean? So
I wonder but it's different because he actually tested positive.
It is, but still.
COVID. Oh, I agree. I think they should scrap it completely. I just said.
Yeah.
But they could do like baseball did, which is when baseball got down to this many teams, they basically sent everybody to Texas to one facility and said, let's finish it here. The problem with that is you won't have home fans for these games. So, I would scrap it personally. But whatever, we can move on from that before I get in trouble. So, a couple of coaching decisions today. Stan Van Gundy of the Pelicans was fired Scott Brooks of the Wizards. I don't know if he was fired or if they just parted ways, quote unquote, couldn't come to a new contract agreement. So thoughts on both these guys not being out of there?
Well, I was not surprised one bit by Stan Van Gundy. I was shocked by the hire, to be honest. He didn't seem to be the kind of coach that would fit with that kind of core. Also, the Pelicans don't really have any kind of direction whatsoever. Like when you think about the Pelicans, like what are they trying to do? You know what I mean? Like are they building a young core together? Are they building a championship team right now? They're obviously not doing that. They traded for Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like those are both clear signs that you're not trying to win right now because maybe not so much Steven Adams, but you trade for Eric Bledsoe, you're not trying to win a championship. So, but they're also not young guys. So you're also not building a young core around them because if you were doing that, you'd let Jackson Hayes develop next to Zion. So I don't know why you'd bring somebody in to limit his minutes. So it's just like this franchise doesn't really have any direction right now, in my opinion. I think it would be too early to even try to formulate a championship team around these guys. Like we don't fully know like what Zion is, right? He doesn't know what he is yet. Like we know he's really freaking good, but like we don't know all of his strengths and weaknesses, where he could potentially be exploited, what he's getting better at and things like that. You know what I mean? So how they're going to utilize him. The point forward thing was brand new this year, where he was playing a lot of initiating the offense a lot. So that kind of makes Eric Bledsoe and Lonzo Ball expendable. So there's still a lot of things that you have to learn about Zion and Brandon Ingram together as a duo. If you're set on building around those two guys, you got to figure out, I think you got to first figure out how those two are going to coexist before you can start to build your team around them. And then you kind of go from there. So Stan Van Gundy, I don't think is that kind of coach to be in that. And clearly through their discussions from what I was reading from Woj earlier is that like him and David Griffin were not on the same page as far as the direction that this franchise was going to go in. So, obviously he's going to look for someone Griffin's going to try to look for someone who fits whatever vision. And hopefully there's some clarity that we see on the offseason moves that the Pelicans make. For the Wizards, this is a sign of a potential rebuild. Brad Beal has been non-committal to them long-term. I think they could potentially move on from him. I'm almost certain they're going to want to get out of that Westbrook contract before losing him for nothing. So I think both of those guys will be on the move. I think Westbrook's on the move this summer. I think Brad Beal, if not this summer, before next trade deadline, he will be out of Washington, and a full rebuild will start there because like they're so bad they really should be picking in the top 5, but because like Brad Beal and Westbrook like got them into the playoffs, like they don't even have a lottery pick now. So that's like the worst situation to be in, especially when those two guys have no chance at winning you a championship. Like even if you put really good even if you put really good role players around them, never winning a championship with Russell Westbrook and Brad Beal, like we talked about.
We've talked about that plenty.
Right. So and I don't think Scott Brooks is really wanting to coach any more rebuilds at this stage of his career. He went through it with the Thunder. They had their run, and I think at this point, the Wizards are probably going to enter into tank mode, I would assume.
Yeah, I would assume that as well. And I've never been a Scott Brooks guy. Even Oklahoma City Scott Brooks, I just never really saw it.
He's average. You know what I mean? Like he's not terrible, but I don't think he doesn't win you championships.
I certainly would not want him as my coach. Steve Van Gundy definitely never wanted as the coach. It's interesting how
good guy though.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He parlayed being a good guy into getting another coaching job, right? We loved him on the broadcast, and part of it was because he really got behind the social justice movement, which was great. And then he kind of parlayed that into a head coaching job that maybe he was not the best fit for, and it showed this year. He really struggled trying to figure out that duo. Some of the rotations were just really awkward and didn't make a lot of sense. So I think it's probably best for both parties. Maybe he goes back to TV because he was pretty good at TV.
He was very good.
Not on TV, excluding the social justice stuff. He was just good at it. He was good on TV. calling the game. So maybe he goes back there. As far as what they do, I would love to see like a Chauncey Billups in there with the Pelicans. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, especially if you want to roll with this Zion point forward thing, and you kind of like inject that point guard mind to go along with what Zion already has, which is incredible. I'm not sure if I would stick with the Brandon Ingram duo. I'm not sure how they work together. Maybe you try to move him for a different type of a piece. But as far as these teams, like it's clearly rebuild for the Wizards. I would imagine maybe Beal gets moved for somebody, a BenSimmons or something like that. Who knows? And then the Pelicans are just a mess. We could do a whole episode on how they should try to navigate this and build around Zion, who I think we both agree, as far as the guys under 25, he's in the top 5 of that. He's for me, he's like top 2 with Luka.
Yep.
So
coin flip on those two.
Yeah, it is. So, all right. Last thing today, another personnel change. The Mavs fired their GM after Donnie Nelson, after 23 years. Fired leaves, semantics, I think. But
yeah.
So where do the Mavs go from here? Do you like the decision anyway?
I do like the decision. Although I'm pretty sure Mark Cuban signs off on everything, so I don't know how big of a decision this is.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't say I like the decision. If they fired him, I don't like it because it's not like he bungled anything. Maybe trading away Seth Curry wasn't a brilliant idea. But the Mavs are in that awkward phase to me where they don't have a lot of trade capital and they don't have a lot of draft capital.
Yep.
So to improve this roster, and there aren't any really great free agents coming up this summer, in which they wouldn't have a ton of cap space for anyway. So I think they've got to do some restructuring and retooling here to try to get some better talent around Luka. I think they need to rethink their approach on their usage of Kristaps Porzingis if they're not going to trade him. Who knows? And he has basically said that he doesn't like the role that he's played. No one on the Mavs should like the role that they're playing right now. It's just way too much Luka. As great as he is, it's just too much Luka with the ball in his hands. And they have other offensive playmakers. So it really doesn't make sense how much he dominates the ball, other than the fact that, I know you want to give your best player the ball, but Brunson's a good creator. Tim Hardaway Jr.
That's the direction that they're going with. Donnie Nelson leaving. The reason he left is because Cuban hired this ex-professional gambler who became this advanced statistics and quantitative whatever he's called. And they're going all in on this model of best player with the ball all the time. The Harden Rockets style, basically, is what the Daryl Morey Rockets style is basically what they're looking to go all in on surrounding Luka. I agree. He has the ball too much. I don't think it's a winning formula, not in the playoffs anyway. Even when he has these games where he goes off and goes crazy, you still need other guys to touch the ball. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't know why anyone would mimic that mold that didn't win a championship. That doesn't make a ton of sense
Thank
to me.
you.
But, it's like, all right, well, are you going to move on from Porzingis now? You invested a pretty solid amount into him as far as draft picks and stuff. So, and then you re-signed him to a big contract. That's going to be hard to move now that you've turned him into Brook Lopez. I just don't. They're in a tough spot. So I can see why Donnie Nelson either left voluntarily or was fired, whatever happened here. But I'm hoping that Mark Cuban can and Rick Carlisle, who typically wasn't who was never really an analytics dude. That came out of nowhere. I hope they kind of rethink their approach here, because they could have gotten out of this first round and probably should have, if they rethink their approach. So maybe hopefully this, leads to a different approach, but it doesn't look like it looks like it's going the opposite way. And I don't think that's really great for them. Maybe they're banking on a superstar free agent in a couple of summers. I don't know, but they're going to be in the same spot, like 4 through 7 seed, first round, maybe second round exit for probably the next 2 to 3 years, just from looking at, unless they pull off some kind of Houdini act and get someone to come in. But they need a second scorer to get Luka off the ball a little bit more.
And you talk about the Embiid supermax, right? So Luka's kind of in the same spot. He's like he could sign the biggest extension ever after a rookie contract.
Yep.
But if I was him, I'm not 100% sure that I would want to sign on for that long with this franchise who hasn't really put anything around him. Porzingis was supposed to be that piece, and obviously Porzingis was not that guy. I think Luka played a part in that with the way with his style. I think he played a part in that. But I don't know. We could see Luka forcing his way out in a couple of years. He could be the next one on this train of guys forcing their way out.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing about like drafting a superstar like this early in his career, is that it like automatically puts you into like wanting to be a contending mode. And a lot of times, especially when you're talking about like someone like the Mavs who doesn't like typically tank. So like when you land a guy like that without tanking, you don't necessarily have a ton of like draft capital or picks to like package together and go trade for another star. And I think like the Giannis re-signing in Milwaukee is going to have a big domino effect. And they're going to be Dallas is going to be one of the teams impacted, because I think that was a legitimate option for him. If he had been a free agent this summer, I think Dallas would have been a legitimate destination. You could do signs and trades and things like that. And I think he would have been a really good fit with Luka. And I think Carlisle would have put him at the 5. Yes. I think we'd know for sure he would have put him at the 5, and that would have been a scary point guard center duo. So I think that kind of threw the Mavs, and really he was the last big free agent that was supposed to be in this 2021 class. So, I think that kind of threw them in a wrench in their future plans here. I haven't looked at, any contracts or thing or what the 2022 free agent class is going to look like, but like I can't think of anyone big that's going to be hitting the market by then.
Kawhi.
And I guess Kawhi and Paul George, right? Their contracts line up, I think.
Kawhi could opt out after this year.
Yeah. So maybe you get some luck there.
I don't see it though.
Yeah. So like, 2022 rolls around, and Luka definitely will have that option to be like, looking at what they do in that offseason and be like, I don't know that they can get the talent around me, even though Dallas is a great destination to land free agents, because the no state tax or income taxes, whatever, that Texas and all that. Mm-hmm. Texas typically has not had an issue signing free agents. I just don't know that any of them are going to be available.
I don't know either. But
realistically,
you know how we always talk about the Knicks, and we always are like, are they going to get this guy? Are they going to get this guy?
Mavs are that team too.
Well, I think Luka could be that guy that they finally get, because I think he kind of is like from this European, right? He's played for Real Madrid, I believe, basketball. What do the guys in European soccer do? They go to the biggest city, for the biggest team, and they say, "I'm going to make the most money here." Damn the championships or the trophies. They normally come in soccer because everyone does that. But I would not be surprised if Luka said, I'll go to New York and I'll be that superstar. That'd be cool.
Especially when this year showed that they're not that far away. I think that's what they're a superstar away from being a team that can actually win. Yeah, that could, like him and Julius Randle, I think would be a nice duo.
I like that.
I think you'd probably have to let RJ Barrett go cap wise or trade wise, sign and trade wise. And I think you'd be very okay with that. Get Mitch Robinson back as a rim protector.
Well, that's
Derrick Rose off your bench.
Yeah, that's sometime down the road. Down the road here with Luka going anywhere. But it is interesting to think about. Trying to plan that out. So, all right, that's all the topics we had for today. We ran a little bit long, but there's a lot to talk about. So, Coop, what is going on at the All In Network?
Well, we've got a bunch going on. So we actually just released some new merch for our All In Bets and DFS page. So their logo, they've got a nice little kind of like one of these water bottles out, a mask, and a cell phone case available. So head on over to our Teespring store. You can find the link of that in the description of our YouTube video. You can find it on our website at allinnetwork.net. So go to any of those places, and you can find all of our merch. So there's a new merch out. Make sure you guys check out the latest episode of All In Politics. They're going to be returning soon as well for the continuation of their season 3. For us, next week we'll be off. Yep. Like I said, I'm going to Puerto Rico. I'm going to go live it up. Vacation. On a vacation, get some time away, get a little tan. So next time you guys see me, I should look, a little more mocha,
a little less
instead of caramel. Yeah. So no pod from us next week, and that's probably going to be good because we'll come back in like the thick of the conference finals and talk a little bit more hoops with you guys. So. But yeah, make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button if you're on our YouTube channel. Make sure you turn on post notifications so you know when we go live or when we upload new episodes. That's really important. And we thank you guys, who have done those things so far. Those of you who subscribe to our channel, and also those of you who listen in the audio platforms and subscribe there, leave reviews and ratings. All that stuff really helps out the podcast. So thank you guys for continuing to do that and show support.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We really appreciate you hanging out with us for the last hour of Talking Hoops. We'll be back in 2 weeks. See you later.
Yes, see you guys.